All right, welcome in everyone. This is Jared Palmgren, host of the Defending the Natty podcast. I hope you guys had yourself a good time this past month. You are listening to the only college fantasy dynasty podcast, at least the only year-round one currently. I know some of our guests have been doing some awesome dynasty content recently. We'll get to them here in a moment. You can find all of us on your podcast feeds once a month on the 15th of each month on the Chasing the Natty podcast feed. We are right there bringing you Dynasty content every single month. If you want to support the great work we are doing here, head on over to campusofcanton.com, subscribe there with one of our awesome tiers. You'll find everything you need for your CFF, Devi, C2C, CFF Dynasty, betting needs, everything, including articles, ADP, rankings, including my own startup CFF Dynasty rankings now available on campusofcanton.com, the only published CFF Startup Dynasty rankings out there, which means that every CFF Dynasty league I do from here on out will be impossible for me because everybody will be using my rankings. And even so much more than that. You can find me in the show on Twitter. I'm at CFF_Jared. My partner in crime is here with me, as always, Mr. Nate Marchese. He is at CFF Nate on Twitter. And today, we have a special episode of Defending the Natty as we welcome on our first guest to Defending the Natty, Mr. Josh Chevalier, the CFF lead and analyst over at Fantasy Points, and Mr. Eric Froton, another longtime CFF analyst from NBC Sports Edge and also a member of the Fantasy Points CFF team over there. I never know who to start with when I have three guests on here, so I'll start with my partner in crime. Nate, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm awesome. I'm ready to fire up a little mock draft here for the dynasty side of things. I'm really enjoying having Josh and Eric on with us, so it's gonna be a lot of fun. It's gonna be a blast. We've all dynastied together, so it's gonna be fun to actually just kind of put it here all together in this mock.
I feel like I'm getting like completely exclusive content. I know for a fact, Nate, over the years, you have been very, very tight-lipped about how you feel about incoming freshmen. You love having your own hidden guys here, and I'm slowly but surely bringing that information out of you.
I hate mocks, man. I wanna keep it all to myself until the money starts flowing, and then it's like, all right, let's let it ride now. But this is fun either way. Now that we get the dynasty pod, man, I'm willing to throw it out there and just kind of let it fly.
All right, well, welcome on our first guest here. I'll just start there on the left there. Mr. Josh Chevalier, as I mentioned, CFF analyst and lead at Fantasy Points. Josh, how you doing tonight, man?
Doing well, man. I'm super excited to be on here. I mean, I think I've lost to all of you guys in championships and Dynasty, so this is just like my moment of humility. I'm king of getting there. I just can't get over the hump.
Didn't you win the year before I beat you, Josh? I thought you won the Blue Bloods league year before.
Yeah, you're being modest. You've beat me too.
Yeah, well, I've gotten to a few championships, but my claim to fame is definitely getting to the finals and then losing to everyone. So.
And then our other guest coming on here today, all the way from sunny San Diego. He was just telling us how wonderful the weather always is in San Diego. Mr. Eric Froton, who I believe still has is that the sun still up outside your window there? Eric, you are muted.
Yes, absolutely. Sorry about that. Yes, it is. It's the sun is still out, and I won't go and put on the artificial lights until it goes down. I don't like to put on the artificial light. I have sensitive eyes.
Man, time's
so
up. Go ahead.
I'll take that. No problem. I understand.
I would say time zones are so weird because here I am hopped up on coffee over here trying to stay awake for a 10 p.m. showing, and the sun's still out over there with Eric. As you guys all alluded to here, we have ourselves a freshman and supplemental mock draft that we are doing tonight. It'll be, as the name suggests, it'll include both freshmen and supplemental players. The way we determine the supplemental players, same way we determine them for our supplemental players show. These are players that are rostered on less than 10% of leagues at the end of week 13 last year. With a little bit of a twist, we have a certain group of players that are going to be limited. We have 9 players that, in order to kind of simulate the idea of it being a limited player pool, that we can only choose one of. Because these are very top tier players that are available in some of my dynasty leagues, but they're not available in a good chunk of them. And so we don't want to overwhelm our supplemental draft here with a ton of elite players that are decently widely available, but most likely in a dynasty format, they're probably already taken. So we'll have a couple of those. I'll get to those here in a second. In addition, as I kind of mentioned, all the supplemental players we have are ranging from a ton of different guys, from players coming up from the FCS, players that were rostered very lowly at the end of last year. Obviously, we have all of our freshmen here in the draft, so we're going to have a very good mix of all the different players that you could possibly pick in your drafts moving up. So I'm going to go ahead and throw us over here to the actual draft page, and I'm going to go ahead and throw on the 100-yard rush here to determine what order in the draft we will go in. And during that point, I will go ahead and ask Josh, what is your general strategy when you go into supplemental and freshman drafts?
Yeah, I mean, I really thought about this. Because I think all of us are used to drafting at the end of the rounds. And I'm typically just going best available player. I mean, no matter where I'm drafting, I have my guys. I like them. I trust my eval. And so I'm just going best available player. I don't really go even for need on my team. I figure I can get that through the waiver wire, or later on in the draft, I can try to figure that out with other guys. So whoever I'm highest on, I'm typically going. I would say I'm one that probably drafts more freshmen earlier than most people. But yeah, I usually go freshman over supplemental early on.
Gotcha. Eric, what about you, man? What do you typically do in the supplemental drafts? What do you aim for?
Yeah, I try to get my high impact freshmen. Everybody likes to have a plan, have something to build around, so you can say, all right, well, if this year doesn't go well, then at least I have a couple of my favorites. So the first 3 rounds, I typically try to stay freshman oriented unless there's somebody I just simply can't pass up, and then make the pivot to sort of a half and half strategy. Pluck a couple of opportunistic upperclassmen, but try to at least cobble together depth as well around my existing players. Like if I would have Trevion Henderson, or Quinshon Judkins, I'd probably be looking at a Ohio State running back to be named later. There'd be around something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like to, outside of the tippity top elite freshmen, try to keep my house in order in my backfield and typically QB succession plans.
Absolutely. And Nate, what about you, man? How do you typically go into these supplemental drafts?
Well, I don't want to take. Are we on the clock?
Nope, I just paused the draft.
No, I just paused it. Okay, good. I didn't want to take anybody's time here. I totally agree with what both Eric and Josh have said. I mean, I like to play in really competitive leagues, and for the most part, a lot of the guys that would really fill out a nice supplemental draft pool are pretty much taken. So you're kind of leaning on those freshmen a lot of the times, because that's kind of the cream of the crop of what's going to be available in those freshman supplemental drafts. So yeah, I mean, I usually just target a handful of guys that are my guys, and you've drafted with me before. I mean, once I kind of have my sights set on a few guys, I'm not afraid to trade up and try to grab them. And that's, I like to be aggressive with the ones that I have the most confidence in. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't.
One thing I personally have had to learn over the last couple of years is very much not overspending, in my opinion, on 1-year rentals. That is a thing that I will look at guys like last year. I made the mistake of drafting a lot of Jordan Curley, Justin Lockhart. Those are 2 guys that were looking at 1 year left max. And I was like, okay, I need a wide receiver to fill out my starting roster. And I would spend up for those guys. And so I personally have learned to kind of back off those the first couple of rounds for the most part. What about you guys? When do you guys kind of typically start looking at those 1-year rentals in supplemental drafts? I guess we'll go with Froton.
I typically will look around round 5, probably 4 or 5. The first 3 rounds, very rarely will I entertain an upperclassman, in one of those supplemental types. I think the essence of Dynasty is we want to build. We're builders, and we want to have that full complete roster. And I already have so many upperclassmen already that I feel like I'm passing up the opportunity to secure the future with my premium guys that I really like, because once you get down the board, it kind of becomes a little bit more of a crapshoot, or a lot more of it. So, that's kind of how I'll approach it.
Josh, what about you, man? Where do you start aiming for those 1-year rental type of guys?
Yeah, I'm the same. I mean, I'm rounds 4 or 5 because I spend so much time on freshmen in the off season that I'm like, man, I want to go with the guys that are gonna have upside. I swing for fences. I mean, there's so much that you can get off the waiver wire and any of these things that we play that I want to swing for the fences and go for my guys. And you guys know me well enough to know I got my guys and I want to get them where I want to get them. And so that's what I do early on. And usually those are freshmen that I fall in love with.
Nate, I know for a fact in the past you have been very vocal about the fact in CFF Dynasty you should try to compete every single year. So are you willing to kind of spend up on right now producers, even if they have only 1 year left compared to these other guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think the cop-out answer I have is that it just depends. I mean, it depends on the player, it depends on the situation. I know as I've been more involved with Campus to Canton and all the information that I've, gotten from everybody that's on our team over there and following others and stuff like that, like there's just so much more freshman information out there. And I feel more confident now in some of my freshman picks than maybe I did 2 years ago. So that can kind of sway things to where I would probably lean a little bit more freshman now than what I used to. But that it's kind of the same question we get, with Campus Canton drafts. When do you just turn the page and start looking at CFF guys versus Devi guys? It's kind of the same situation here, but from a CFF Dynasty perspective. And for me, it just honestly it depends. Depends a lot.
This next question, last question before we start the draft, I promise you guys, it's just a thought that popped into my head. Nate, we've discussed
I
this
want
before.
to see where Froton's going with, man. I'm
I know.
excited.
Sorry. I keep having these thoughts pop into my head. Nate, we've discussed this in the past, so I'll probably skip over you for this question. But Josh or Eric, whichever one of you wants to answer first, the transfer portal has obviously made a huge impact on college football the last couple of years, and we can't, frankly, project 2-3 years down the line like we used to be able to, especially when it comes to systems. How has that impacted the way you draft in freshman and supplemental drafts?
I'll let Josh take it. I took the last one.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll give an example of last year. A negative impact for me, I feel like potentially, is I took a lot of Jonte Cook in the late first round, thinking that, like that's going to be his job. They're grooming him to be the next X, on the outside. And then they go and grab Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden and Silas Bolden. And it's like, could Jonte Cook be that guy? Like, sure, he could. But now he's got a lot more competition. And I wasted a first round pick on him. And there's not really a lot of value to trade him. So I would say it feels right now uncertain to me. Like it seems like we are in a transition. I'm not sure where to go. I think where I want to go, and today may reflect that, is that I'm just going to go on talent and just go like, man, if they're going to be usurped, then they're going to hit the transfer portal potentially and, and find another place. But I don't really know. I mean, I think that's part of I think we all want to be futurists in some ways, right? And predict the future. It's part of dynasty and be ahead. And I think we have in the future. But right now, I think there's a little bit of uncertainty. So when there's uncertainty, I go, who are the guys that I just like? And I don't even necessarily care about landing spot to a certain degree right now. I'm just going to go talent.
I think a positive example is Evan Stewart, right? Evan Stewart there at Texas A&M, quite frankly, like under Jimbo Fisher, he's incredibly talented. And there were flashes here and there of him potentially being a CFF darling there, but it never fully materialized. But now he transfers, goes to Oregon, perfect spot. He's being taken in the first, second round of redraft leagues now, versus if he stayed at Texas A&M, he'd probably still be going decently high, but probably I'd say maybe 6th, 7th round in CFF drafts if he was at A&M. So Froton, I got a few minutes here before we get started. How does the transfer portal impacted the way you draft?
Yeah, I think it prioritizes talent a little bit over circumstance. Kind of evens that out a little bit, because you'd expect that the players that are there, even if they get beat out, especially at these higher levels, Specifically, obviously, we're talking like the Ohio State wide receiver room. Noah Rogers is a good example, who went to NC State and now has had sort of a rebirth after being behind, several players. But I think that helps. And even more so, probably that's a wide receiver example. I think even more so the quarterbacks, where they're all, I mean, if you're a high profile premium 4-star quarterback, even if you don't beat out the other 4 stars that are around you in your room, there's always going to be opportunity. And a lot of times, if you hold on to those guys, if you have a big enough roster, where they end up going to is going to be better for college fantasy purposes than the place they were at potentially. So I do think, especially with QB, you really get a second life if they don't win their first opportunity.
All righty. With all that being said, I think it's about time we start drafting here, y'all. Again, just real quick for those listening and watching at home, there'll be a 2-minute clock. Each of the experts here are going to explain their pick as the 2-minute clock is winding down. Then they'll put their pick up on the board. We are not going to comment on each other's picks until we reach the end of each round, in which case I will pause the draft, and then we will have a 10-15-minute discussion at the end of each draft. It's going to be very fast-paced for the most part, so y'all strap in, and I say we go ahead and get started. Eric, I will run the draft the moment you say go, sir.
Go.
You're going.
All right. Well, this is a player I was fortunate enough to see. I feel like it's a 2-man top of the draft. I've seen the other person go in most of the number ones, and I get it, but I can't help what I saw on the field last year at the Elite 11, which I'll be leaving for in the morning. Jeremiah Smith, Ohio State. That man is an absolute freak of nature. I've been in the Elite 11 3 straight years. This will be number 4. I have not seen anybody at 17 years old, 16 years old go and dominate upper echelon competition like he did. He was going up against the best in the country. He'd invite everybody there, working with the best quarterbacks, and it didn't matter who it was. Didn't matter where they put the ball. Jeremiah Smith is a fully formed, he really is that Julio Jones prototype that you don't see kids who are 6'3", 225, and just the body control, the speed, the agility, advanced feel for the position. I can't wait to see what he becomes in Brian Hartline's wide receiver room over there at Ohio State. All they do is develop amazing, receivers, and he will be no different from a freshman point of view. Yeah, this year you probably aren't going to get the full effect, but Julian Sayin is there. Keep in mind you have a pretty big quarterback coming in next year as well, who I won't mention for 2025, but there's going to be a quarterback waiting for him next year, and it's going to be Jeremiah Smith.
All right, Josh, you're on the clock with the 1-2 there. What are you looking at, man?
Yeah, I think I'm going to take the other 1-2 here, and I'm going to actually go Micah Hudson at Texas Tech. So, I think it was between him and DJ Lagway. And as much as I just talked about, talent over system, I can't get out of my mind that old Billy is still the head coach there at Florida. And Micah Hudson, man, I think he is he's the next Malik Neighbors type in college football. I mean, he's just so dynamic with the ball in his hands. And, if, Eric and I have talked about this before, but if Zach Kitley is able to run that offense the way he wants, has the quarterback that he wants, then, man, Micah Hudson's going to have at least a good 2 years, if not 3, if he stays there. And if not, he's going to Texas or, some other system that's going to be awesome. So I love Micah Hudson, man. His talent is incredible. I would have gotten Jeremiah Smith number 1. But this year, the wide receiver is absolutely loaded. I think that'll be a theme. And so I want to get one of those top guys in Micah Hudson. So I'm going to go ahead and select him.
Go right ahead.
And there we go.
All right, Nate, you're on the clock with the 1-3. Who are you going with?
Man, I agree with you that this year's draft does actually start at 3. I think that's where things kick off, because I think there's a clear number 1 and number 2 in my mind. However, One of those guys is still left, and that is DJ Lagway. I was actually writing down notes because for Micah Hudson, because I was under the impression that Lagway and Smith were going to go 1-2. So I had all these notes I was going to write down for what I was going to say about Micah Hudson. But scratch that. I will be going DJ Lagway here. And yes, the Sunbelt Billy situation there with him being the head coach does scare the bejesus out of me with DJ Lagway. But I do think because of his dual threat ability, because of the hype that surrounds him, the everything that I saw on tape from the video, I mean, he is so athletic. The throwing motion does kind of weird me out. There are some times where like he will throw it and both feet will be off the ground, and I'm just like, what the hell are you doing, man? I don't understand why. Whenever you're not even pressured that much, he like jump throws. So that that kind of weirds me out. But he does have a really strong wide receiver room that we can at least assume that Trey Wilson will still be there next year. If he were to get some action this year, which I don't think is out of the question, if Florida starts to kind of fall apart, that they could make a move and start playing Lagway just to show the donors, show the fan base, hey, look what we've got. Don't fire me, please God, don't fire me. I got DJ Lagway. I can keep DJ Lagway. So that would be my choice here. And we'll move it on to you, Jared.
All right, I'm on the clock here at 104. I'm going to go a different direction than where you guys are going. You guys take 3 straight freshmen off the board. I'm going to go ahead and take my supplemental player, my elite supplemental player here. Josh, you kind of mentioned before, the wide receiver talent in this supplemental draft year, great across the board. If anything you want at wide receiver, you can find it. You can find some great one-year rental guys. You can find some great second-year guys that have plenty of eligibility left that are probably going to start for their teams. You got some elite talent at the top for freshmen. The position that worries me the most, and Nate and I talked about this on our supplemental show, is running back. And we have the option here because he's owned in less than 5% of leagues total. So he's going to be available in quite a few of your dynasty teams because he didn't pop off until the very end of last year. I'm going to go ahead and take Abu Sama here, running back out of Iowa State. Freshmen are great, but a lot of them we're going to have to wait a year on. I'll go ahead and take a guy right here with 3 years of eligibility left, is going to start for a system in CFF that has produced elite running backs for us in the past. Thank you for David Montgomery's. Think of your Breece Halls, right? That's the kind of stuff that I personally look for a lot in these drafts. Like, again, freshmen are great. Obviously, you want to draft these top-end talented guys. But, man, there's a lot of guys in this year's supplemental pools that have 3 years of eligibility left. A lot of them play for teams that don't really develop talent that makes them want to go to the NFL early. And so I think I'm going to go ahead and take advantage here. I'm going to take Abu Sama, running back out of Iowa State. And, again, a lot of it has to do with the fact that he's an elite running back in a year where I don't think there's really a ton of great options at running back, either supplemental-wise or even freshman-wise. We'll go ahead and put him on the board and throwing it back over to Froton with his second pick of the first round.
All right. Well, it is I no problem with the Sama pick. I'm sticking with the wide receivers / quarterbacks in terms of this freshman class. I'm going to go with a quarterback this time. And it comes down to, how quickly, again, it plays into what Jared's saying. How quickly are some of these guys going to play? Well, we know that over at Nebraska, Dominic Raiola is going to play. Dominic Raiola is that. Dylan Raiola is going to play. Dominic Raiola's son is going to play. He is going to start. He is the bonus baby of the dreams of the Cornhuskers. Our co-host, myself and Josh, Zach Hall, just absolutely beside himself. He lasted till 5 here. But with Raiola, you're getting it right out of the gate. And if you want somebody who has just sky-high upside, like we've seen with him, prototype NFL body, we know that he has designs on going and trying to be, essentially a number 1 draft pick in the NFL. And he's at Nebraska. They're going to let him have the keys to the kingdom. Everything's going to be built around him. He'll be catered to. It is going to be his show. I cannot wait for Dylan Raiola to step on the field and finally take charge. So I am going to take it did go. I I had him queued up. I thought it was.
Might have to switch over to Froton too.
I switched over to Froton too. I'm on it now. Bang.
Okay, I was about to pause the draft if you needed me to.
Oh, like such a. I went to take him like, oh wait, it's Froton 1. Sorry about that, guys.
Good. Josh, you're up, man.
Dude, I'm so glad you said something because I'm still on Josh Chevalier 1. All right.
Right.
I got it queued up. I am going to go Ryan Williams here. So I'm going to stick with freshman wide receivers. I mean, he's just a guy. I think we know what wide receivers can do in the Kalen DeBoer system. This is a kid that was 2-time player of the year in the state of Alabama as a sophomore and junior. I mean, this kid is just incredible. I do think, again, like Froton and I have talked about this guy before. It's like there's opportunity in that room, absolutely, for him to be able to step up. I'm worried a little bit about his weight. He is 17, right? He's coming in a year early. So there could be a chance he doesn't get on the field at all this year, but he could absolutely be the wide receiver 1 in that offense for a couple of years. And we know, again, what wide receivers can do in the Kalen DeBoer offense. And so I like Ryan Williams a lot. I mean, his talent is just incredible. And if I got Hudson and Ryan Williams as my top 2 wide receivers, a year from now, I'm going to be really excited about that, I think. So I'll go with Ryan Williams here.
All right, Nate, throwing it over to you, man. Which direction are you going here?
Yeah, so you mentioned it earlier about the positional scarcity that we're seeing with running back in this particular draft, not being a super strong freshman running back class. Same with supplemental. So I'm actually going to piggyback what you did, except for I'm not going to be on the supplemental side. I'm going to take the freshman. And in this case, I'm going to take Quentin Martin, who's over at Penn State. There are a handful of still developmental programs left out there that don't really, focus on the transfer portal. They try to get the freshmen in, they develop them, they get an incredible strength and conditioning program. Penn State's one of those programs, similar to like Clemson. So it's unlikely that they would be able to recruit over him. He is one of the, top 3 or 4 running backs in this class. I think that there's a pretty strong chance that one, if not both, of Katron Allen and Singleton move on. So I think that a guy that has a lot of receiving upside and a lot of athletic ability in that particular program where they can develop him, I like the opportunity for that and at least 3 years, 2 to 3 years of really strong production. So let me get him queued up here. Sorry, guys.
Oh, good.
No, you're good.
There he is, Quentin Martin, Penn State.
Okay, there we go. Finally came across my board. Alrighty, I'm back on the clock with my second pick here. I'm going to go with the guy that I guess is my guy, technically, because I took him in the first C2C freshman supplemental draft that I did this year at the 1-9 pick in that draft. Almost got him again in Nate's supplemental draft. Because if my other guy that I ended up taking wasn't there, I definitely would have taken this guy because among a lot of the top end freshmen here, in my opinion, the guy I'm about to take here has the clearest path to early playing time because the room he's just straight up walking into sucks for the most part. He's a top end guy. He plays for a system that should it get rolling, should be great for fantasy for the most part. I'm going to take Cam Coleman, the wide receiver out of Auburn. We've already got some great reports out of spring camp. Look fantastic in the spring game. I've gotten multiple people relatively close to the Auburn program, and man, they cannot shut up about this dude. And quite frankly, again, we've seen it already on the field. Why? Again, clearly the best weapon they have there day one. Yes, they bring in Keandre Lambert-Smith, which is going to help them a bit, but I really think Cam Coleman by the end of the year is going to be their go-to guy. Lambert-Smith is, a field stretcher. He'll have some big games here and there because he'll be able to be the guy that can hit that big play right there. But in terms of the guy they're going to go to over and over again, Coleman absolutely fits that profile right there. Again, this is the kind of stuff that I'm looking for in freshman supplemental drafts. Again, there's a lot of guys you got to wait a year on. Coleman is not going to be one of those guys. We're going to find out very, very quickly whether or not he will be a dominant CFF player for the future, and that's why I'm taking him here early in the first round. Froton, over to you.
Well, I'm going to take, obviously Coleman is right there in terms of the top wide receivers. I'm going to take my number 4 wide receiver. I have him just a hair ahead of Cam Coleman, despite the obvious great work that he was doing over at the X. TJ Moore, Clemson. I think that the size, the body control, the overall way that he affects the game on 3 levels. You see, he, in terms of his route running, far more advanced than I think you're going to see most of the guys in this class. And then just, he's got that prototype X frame, 6'3", 195, great flexibility, ability to come back to the ball, win in multiple ways, especially at the catch point. I mean, it's so fluid. I think he could have that sort of a Teteroa McMillan impact where he's a rare, long, rangy wideout who can snap his breaks off at a rate that I don't think you see guys his age do, just very, very sharp. I'm all about TJ Moore. We talked about as well with Quentin Martin, Nate brought up. Some schools have a tendency to not shop outside of their rooms as much unless there's a real deficiency. And I think Clemson certainly qualifies there. No transfer policy is in full effect. So you're not going to see him get overtaken. So I think you're going to get right out of the gate, TJ Moore is going to play quickly and have a immediate impact. And I think as soon as year 2, we could kind of be talking about him the same way that we're talking about Justin Ross as he became after his freshman year. TJ Moore, Clemson.
All right, Josh, Chevy, who are you going with here at the 110?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the back end of these drafts are interesting because, like, I like a lot of these guys the same, and I'm like, man, I could probably get these guys in the second round and just trade down, and maybe pick up a little draft capital. But I'm gonna go with, and I don't love it, but I'm gonna go with Kewan Lacey.
Okay,
Spicy.
I love his talent. I think one of the main things I look at, well, two main things I look at in running backs. 3 is size, which I think he has enough of. 2 is I look for burst. 3, I look for contact balance. And I think Kewan Lacey has all of those things. I think he needs to grow a little bit bigger, but we've seen all sorts of backs have an amazing production, right, in that Missouri offense. You got Nate Noel there and Marcus Carroll right now, so you're not going to get any year 1 production. But, man, if he takes over year 2, year 3, then he could absolutely be really good. And if he is, for whatever reason, if he doesn't decide not to stay in Missouri, I think he transfers back to one of the Texas schools and can be productive, at a Houston or SMU or any of those schools that I think would go after him. So I like Kewan Lacey. I like his talent. And I definitely think that, an elite wide receiver out of the backfield. Ran a lot of slot routes, to be honest. Yeah. And again, that's what they want to do in that Missouri offense. He likes to throw the ball quite a bit to the running backs. So got those dual threat guys like that, high volume. I'm going to take a shot on a guy like Kewan Lacey. So that's my pick.
All right, Nate, your last pick of the first round here. Who are you going with?
Yeah, with the 111 here, I'm actually I was kind of trying to hold off on dipping into the supplemental pool that we've got to work with that that upper tier group that you had given us, but I think I'll go ahead and use it here. I wasn't sure if I was going to use it on Jaheim White or Mario Anderson. I like Anderson more for a for a single season, like redraft type setup. But when we're talking dynasty and I get the extra years, I'm going to go Jaheim White here, running back, West Virginia. You talk about explosive. That dude's got some burst for sure. I liked a lot of what I saw from him last year as he took over for CJ Donaldson. Donaldson was injured off and on, but White just at the end of the day just looked like the better running back. So I like that. I like Neil Brown's track record with running backs. So I'll go ahead and take a shot with him here and move it on to you for your last pick in the round, Jared.
All right, I'm going to take another one of my guys here, but frankly, I think he fits the profile of exactly what you want to look for in freshman quarterbacks. you want to look at elite systems and you want to find out who are the guys that have already kind of worked their way up into that 2 deep, right? It's very rare you're going to find freshmen that are immediately starting at programs across the country, especially this year. It's even more rare with the transfer portal. Schools can go out and get 1-year rental guys pretty much on a whim at this point. It's very rare you're going to get your Dylan Raiolas, right, where the seas have been parted for him to start his freshman year. So the best you're going to get is going to be guys that immediately work their way up into the 2 deep. And that's why I'm going to go with Cedric Bailey here, quarterback out of NC State. The reviews from him have been just absolutely phenomenal this spring. As we saw in the spring game as well, he looked the part. He fits into the Robert Anae system super, super well. It's Grayson McCall's year. No doubt about it. I'm not expecting anything from Bailey this year, but from all accounts, it sounds like they're absolutely ready for him to take over that next year. NC State's got 2 great quarterbacks there. And quite frankly, I'm just now 1 injury away from having the Robert Anae quarterback for not just 1, not just 2, but potentially 3 to 4 years with this back end of the first round pick. And I've been in 2 supplemental drafts so far. Bailey's been available at this point in the draft. So if you are somebody who has done well in your league last year and you're looking for guys to plan for the future, I think Bailey's an excellent, excellent pick for the future. So I'm going to go ahead and take him here. And with that, I will pause the draft and we'll take about 10-15 minutes to discuss the first round here. I'm going to run through the first round again to remind our viewers. That'll give you guys a chance to kind of gather your thoughts on which players you might want to talk about here and there. At the 101, Eric selected Jeremiah Smith, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. At 1-2, Josh took Micah Hudson, the wide receiver out of Texas Tech. At 1-3, Nate took DJ Lagway, the quarterback going to Florida. At 1-4, I took Abu Sama, the first supplemental player off the board there, the running back out of Iowa State. At 1-5, Eric came back and took quarterback Dylan Raiola going to Nebraska. Josh takes his second pick with Ryan Williams, wide receiver out of Bama, at the 1-6 there. At 1-7, Nate uses his second pick on running back Quentin Martin there at Penn State. I used my second pick on Cam Coleman, the wide receiver going to Auburn. At 1-9, Froton took TJ Moore, the wide receiver out of Clemson. Josh follows his third pick with Kewan Lacey, the running back out of Missouri. Nate uses his elite supplemental pick on Jaheim White at the 1-11. And then I used my last pick of the first round on quarterback Cedric Bailey at NC State. If y'all don't mind, I have a take that I want to put out there. And that is, I think Eric and Josh, you guys made a mistake not taking DJ Lagway at 1-1 or 1-2. I think he's the clear 1-1 in this class. At least 2 of you mentioned the fact that you're worried about Billy Napier coaching. Do we not forget that Anthony Richardson was a top 20 quarterback under Billy Napier? And like you could say, like, yeah, Anthony Richardson, athletic freak and everything. Guess what? DJ Lagway is also an athletic freak. And even last year, Graham Mertz, completely unathletic Graham Mertz, was still a top 40 QB in CFF. Again, nobody you're going to be starting, but he was a serviceable option at times. Eric, you've mentioned it before on the Fantasy Points podcast. Billy Napier has to be a bit of a different coach in the SEC. He has to adjust the way he runs his offense because he's playing at a higher level of competition, right? He has to rely on the talent of the guys that he is able to bring in. Look no further than Trey Wilson last year. He was more productive than any wide receiver Billy had at Louisiana, and he was just a true freshman last year. Ricky Pearsall was great. Lagway is going to be just fine, even if Billy Napier somehow sticks it out at Florida the next couple of years. But let's say that doesn't happen, right? Billy Napier's fired at the end of the year. Who's to say Lagway, who was courted by Lincoln Riley at the end of his recruitment, doesn't then go to USC? In which case, he would become the clear #1 overall pick in all of CFF probably at that point. I don't see a bad path for DJ Lagway moving forward because of his skill set and the scenarios that he's walking into. That's my take. I think DJ Lagway should have been the 1-1 pick.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with it. I talked about it, obviously, when I made the selection with Jeremiah Smith. I just think he's a generational talent that is a can't-miss prospect in a 40-point-per-game offense that will be 40 points per game from here to eternity. With DJ Lagway, yeah, absolutely. I had an opportunity to actually talk to him pretty much at length at the Elite 11 last year for a good solid 15 minutes and got a feel for him. I like him as a person. He's a good kid, seems to have his head on straight. So, like, in terms of rooting for him, absolutely. But take a look at Florida's schedule this year. It's the toughest schedule in the country. I don't think that gets any easier next year. They're always going to have to play Florida State, and they're in the SEC. And like you said, I mean, sure, maybe another coach comes in and he's more offensive minded, or he could transfer, but he is where he is now. And with the way that quarterbacks to the NFL and as well from high school to college, it's a tougher evaluation. There's a lot more than go wrong, a lot more that goes into the position that I don't have to worry about with Jeremiah Smith, with him being, I think as good a prospect as we've seen again since Julio Jones. He's that caliber of a wide receiver. So I understand that DJ Lagway is going 1 in most of these drafts, but so did Spencer Rattler, and we saw what happened with him. So just because it's a number 1 QB, I'm not ready to go all the way. And Julian Sain's still out there right now. So I love Julian Sain. I am, very high on him. And I think it's a case where if I can get Jeremiah Smith, wait a little bit, have the heir apparent over there for Ryan Day and pair them up, well, that's just as appealing to me. So I respect it and I get it, but we'll see how it plays out.
We will indeed.
I think we have an idea of what maybe Jeremiah Smith's going to be paired up with right here.
I think we might have an idea, don't we, gentlemen? Right.
An illusion. I didn't want to start putting out my DJ Lagway takes because I'm afraid.
No, let's hear it. No, I want to hear
this. Is it, man. This is where you put him out.
I'm not a fan.
Oh. Is it the jump pass thing?
I don't think he's a very good passer. His high school competition, and I think sometimes people see Texas and they think good competition. Right. He did not play good competition in Texas. I know the schools that he played against. Yeah. And they're just not good teams. And so, he put up crazy numbers. Yeah. The way that he ran or won in high school, he will not be able to do in college, in the SEC. Or in the Big 12 if he goes to USC. Like, he's not going to be a dynamic runner. He's not Anthony Richardson as an athlete whatsoever.
Agreed. Yeah.
And I would also say, like, one of the things, like, I'm taking more and more into consideration high school competition when I'm evaluating talent. Just like you would when you're evaluating NFL talent, you want to see those college kids going against the best talent. So SEC kids are probably they're less of a risk than a G5 kid or even a kid that's playing in the Big 12. And so I think DJ Lagway, when he went to the Under Armour All-American game, he struggled in that game and he ended up getting pulled because he had a hurt ankle, but he did not read defense as well. And so when he went up against top competition, I didn't see it. And so there's just some, like, I don't know, man. Those things stick in my head. And then I go, man, he's at Florida. And even Anthony Richardson, you say he's a top 20 QB, but he wasn't like a top 5 QB. I mean, he had some good performances, but Billy definitely held him back.
Who's your top QB in this class, Josh, for CFF Dynasty?
Yeah, I honestly, DJ Lagway would still be the guy that I have ranked, but the guys that I'm going to go after,
you can wait a little bit for some other guys. I get what you're saying. Yeah. And when I watched this film too, I did expect a better athlete. I did catch what you're saying, where I was watching, I was like, he's not like crazy explosive. He's definitely not Anthony Richardson. He's not crazy explosive, but like he could just kind of get to his spots when he needed to, and he was pretty physical. But yeah, he's not as incredible of an athlete as I thought he might be. But in the Florida spring game, I actually thought he was a better passer than I expected. So I thought that was nice. Jared, can I fire off a couple of quick devil's advocate things here?
Yeah, I was about to do a little round robin here of name the most interesting pick that's not your own here from the first round.
Keyshawn Lacy caught my eye a little bit, Josh. Does it worry you at all? I know that some of the numbers that we've got for him, I think he just averaged like 5 to 6 yards a carry, maybe like 5.5 yards a carry in high school with okay competition. Does that worry you at all for Kewan Lacey there?
I think his senior year, he actually averaged like 9.6. I could
Oh,
be
okay.
wrong.
Maybe I saw something else.
I could be wrong on that, but because that is a factor. If a guy's not close to 10 yards per carry in high school,
Mhm.
like, I usually don't consider him as at least one end of that.
Yeah, I know
And
the knock
so,
on him, at least with some of the C2C guys, is that like, where's the efficiency? Like, we think he's explosive. He's
yeah,
this great athlete. He's just playing okay competition, but it didn't seem like he was super efficient.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I definitely, that's something that would definitely catch my eye for sure. I do think though he did have one of those years. I'd have to look it up again.
Yeah.
Um,
Do
but
we
yeah,
do we think Dylan Raiola is Dante Moore 2.0?
I think it's Quinn Ewers 2.0. I think he'll be
But
solid
Quinn
at
Ewers didn't
times.
start year one.
Well, yeah.
Dante
Okay.
Moore was pretty much like, we all thought he was going to be handed the keys. We drafted him. I drafted him super early because I was like, all right, great. Well, at least I don't have to worry about him battling for a spot. He's going to get this job. And turns out when he got the job, it was like, oh, I don't know. Maybe he's not as good as I thought he was.
The reason why I compare him to Quinn Ewers is because a lot of the skill set's similar. Again,
Sure.
Raiola is great. He's not a runner. His ability to make off-platform plays, be able to kind of move around the pocket is incredible. If not, or not just incredible, like elite level stuff. But he's not going to take off and run. That's going to always limit him for CFF purposes. I've never drafted Quinn Ewers because of that. Quinn Ewers' ceiling at CFF is basically capped at like QB 35, 40 every single year, even though he's in a great offense, because he just doesn't have that extra layer. I think Raiola is going to find himself in the same level, and that's why I can't justify taking Raiola, even though he's going to start year one, in the first round of a supplemental player, because again, he just doesn't have the ceiling that some of these other guys do. That's my take on Raiola.
My only other thing that I wrote down notes wise is like, I didn't even put CJ Bailey like in my queue because I knew Jared was going to take him way before anybody else. So it's like, this is pointless for me to do that.
He's one of my boys. I like him quite a bit.
Yeah,
Froton,
man. Get your guy.
Gotta get your guy. Froton, most interesting pick in the first round that was not your own.
Most interesting pick that was not my own. CJ Bailey, your boy, Jared. I might as well just cue you up for this. Obviously, NC State, Robert and I should have the Concepcion and Rogers tandem there, as well as Justin Jolly. We'll see how he does in that step up in competition. But with Julian Sayin on the board, and the potential of next year for him to slot into the Ohio State offense, I do think that even though you like your boy Bailey, that is a fairly hot take, Jared.
I got Bailey as my QB too, and I actually have another quarterback ahead of Sayin as well. Again, it's kind of a similar thing. Sayin's not a runner. I'll go after some of these guys that are going into some pretty good systems that are already pretty much ready to be the backups for their system, so could see playing time in year one. Sayin is great. I could totally see him working his way up in that quarterback room already, because from what it sounds like, Will Howard is fine, but not great. Devin Brown, still kind of waiting on him to make that next step. Sayin sounds pretty good in a lot of these early reports, so I totally understand taking Sayin early, but again, he's not a runner versus some of these other guys are, so I'm willing to kind of chase that a little bit more.
I thought it was interesting on Bud Elliott's summer school on NC State that was just released. They talked for almost 25 minutes about the offense, and CJ Bailey's name did not get mentioned one single time. So to defend Froton here, I guarantee you when they talk about the Ohio State summer school, I guarantee you they're going to talk about Julian Sayin. That name's going to come up a few times, I bet.
And
go
ahead, Josh.
To defend Jared though, I mean, I do think CJ Bailey is the guy next man up in that system. I mean, they raved about him in the spring game, talking about him there, right? And I mean, this is a kid that they really wanted to hold on to. Miami came after him strong at the end, and he ended up staying faithful to them. And I do think he's talented. He's longer. He is athletic. I mean, that is a good system. So, and NC State's a school that I think will be faithful to him. So I think it's a little bit more secure. But Sayin is Sayin. I mean, he's going to be awesome too. So there's nothing against him. One quick thing, Nate. He did have a 10-yard per carry season.
Nice.
Lacey did. But it was 2021, and it was at a Catholic school. So, that doesn't count as much as the 6A competition where he averaged A bit. I think it was like 7 yards per carry his senior
Okay.
year.
Okay. That's
But
not as
there you go. I'm
damning
going to
as
give
what I
full
thought.
context.
Yeah. Got it.
All right, Josh. Unfortunately, we don't have time to fully discuss whoever you bring up here, but just real quick, Josh, your most interesting pick of the first round that was not your own.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the most interesting pick. I mean, I don't want to repeat, so we'll go quick. Raiola.
Okay.
I mean, I just can't see him. I mean, he's at Nebraska. Is this a system that is going to produce anything? I don't know. I mean, it feels like the pick with Raiola is he has early playing time potential, but I'm not sure what we get out of him. Even at that, even if he plays this year, do we get 20 points a game? Like, I don't see this kid like just being an elite out of the box guy. So I think there's some other. I'm almost exclusively dual threat to my quarterbacks, unless they're in an elite system like Washington State or whatever, Texas Tech, that type of deal. So.
Right.
All righty. Let's get started with the second round here before we go 3 hours on this. So, Froton, I'm hitting start here. Who are you going with the first pick in the second round?
Yeah, I won't belabor the point, but Julian saying he was clearly last year. I went into the Elite 11 expecting to see, Lagway, Raiola, etc. And Julian saying clearly dominated that entire competition from bell to bell. Every drill, everything he's doing, he did it flawlessly. I was lucky enough to go and actually get to run a half route tree with Julian Sayin and his brother Aiden last July, and because he was the quarterback for Carlsbad High School, which is in San Diego County. So I went up and ran a full route tree. His ball is so imminently catchable. Even I looked good doing it. So even though I'm obviously an advanced athlete for a writer, that is still a task. So, I mean, just having seen in person with him against all these other quarterbacks, he is the best quarterback for projection, for throwing the ball. He's the best. And even though he's 6'1", 185, I get it. He doesn't have that big frame. He's not going to be a runner. He's going to the Ryan Day system. Will have his 1 year of chip this year. Enjoy. Come in, Chip Kelly. Hey, enjoy. And then he's gone. And it will go right back to throwing the ball and just dicing up the world with Jeremiah Smith and my boy Julian Sayin. So I am taking Julian Sayin with the 2-1.
Josh, you are up with the 2-2. Which direction you going here, man?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to wide receiver. I mean, again, I'm going to go talent. I'm going to go Ryan Wingo. To be honest, I thought he was going to be really raw coming in. I mean, everything in high school. He's from Missouri. Talked about I don't like that type of high school competition. But the kid is 200 pounds, almost 215. I think he's going to get up to 215. And he's running a 10.5 500 meter. The coaches rave about him. They're talking about trying to get him in the lineup this year. And so I'm not expecting a ton of year one production, but I do think he's a guy that can come in next year with Arch Manning, and he could absolutely be the wide receiver one. And if not, he could transfer somewhere and be an elite guy too. So I think there's a lot of options for Ryan Wingo to really hit in CFF. And this is one where I'm just going to go talent and just ignore kind of all the clutter that's there with Texas and go, man, I think he's going to drop in drafts. I think he's going to be a value. And there's a quarterback I wanted to go here, but we'll see if he's there with my next pick. And then we can talk about him. But we'll go Ryan Wingo for now.
If it's a quarterback I'm thinking of, I think Nate's about to take him here. Nate, you're on the clock here, the 2-3. Which direction you going here?
Yeah. Well, see now I wasn't going to, but now I might. Just to kind of tick you guys off a little bit.
Do it. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Screw it. I'll do it. I'm gonna go ahead and take my boy Damon Williams here.
Sorry, I wasn't supposed to react.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to pair a running back here because this was the squad that I got DJ Lagway with. But let's just go ahead and load up on QB here and secure a QB room with Damon Williams, freshman quarterback that's going to Washington. I guess technically a transfer from Arizona to Washington. Followed Jed Fish there. Very undersized, 5'10", 5'11" type guy, smaller guy, but very very athletic, does have a lot of explosiveness, has a strong arm, needs to work a lot on some accuracy things. But overall, I think that he's got big upside, and maybe this team next year is DJ Lagway playing for USC and Lincoln Riley, and Damon Williams playing for Jed Fish at Florida. So maybe this is like a really weird team next year. But I'm gonna go ahead and take him right there just so that I can make sure I get him before you guys do.
That team right there is making sure it's loaded up at quarterback for the future. It understands the value of the position. Speaking of value of the position, the character I've created here for this 1-4 pick here, again, is super, super worried about the lack of running back options that it sees in the future here in this draft. And so it's going to once again go running back here. And it's also going to dip back into the supplemental players here. It is going to be another guy that I would have put as part of the elite options for this draft, except for the fact he is available in every supplemental draft because he didn't do anything until the bowl game, where he ripped off 17 carries for 115 yards, 4 touchdowns on the ground, as well as another touchdown through the air. I'm going to go Ricky Hunt here, the running back out of Ohio. This team is willing to take some risks. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways that the future of Ricky Hunt can go. Obviously, they bring in Anthony Tyus this year, which Phil still says will be the number 1 back for Ohio this year. I personally doubt that. I think it'd be hard for them not to give Ricky Hunt the chance after what he was able to do in the bowl game last year. But we will see. The upside there is just too great for this team to ignore. He's got 4 years of eligibility left because he used up his red shirt last year. So he's basically the same as a lot of these freshman backs that you're looking at here. The big thing really is what happens after this year, right? If he goes off and rips a big one, he's a perfect MAC transfer candidate after the year, in which case you're wondering, all right, where does he end up? But he's a very athletic guy, dominated high school when he was there. He should be able to be successful in a lot of different places. Fingers crossed that he will land somewhere good, but this team's willing to take the risk. I'm taking Ricky Hunt here. Froton, back to you.
I was going to take Ricky Hunt at 2-1, but I had just talked about Julian Sands so much. I was kind of
I was going to take Ricky Hunt
I was kind of tied in. Yeah, I was like tied into it. I was like, all right, I'll
Jared
take Julian
talked us
Sands.
out of him twice, just so
yes, I did.
He literally did. He literally did.
It's perfect.
That's exactly what he was doing. He's like, I'm going to take Sama. I'm going to take Hunt on the same team. It's like anyways. Well, with him off the board, and we haven't already taken a quarterback here. I've got 2 options I'm kicking around, both wide receivers, and I'm going to go with the freshman here, and I'm going to go Mike Matthews for Tennessee. Obviously, that's a honey hole for wide receivers. You have a pretty open room right now, with the exception of Squirrel White, but he's a slot, and he's probably gone after this year if he has a good season. And I can't imagine that Nico is going to turn that potent Josh Heupel offense into the ground assault that our friend Joe Milton turned it into last year. I mean, against all odds, Joe Milton turns Tennessee into a road grader attack. So I think that was an anomaly. I think you can see Nico air this out a little bit more. And over the next couple of years, you can have Mike Matthews to throw to on the outside. And hopefully, I mean, he's somebody who could possibly even make an impact this year. We'll see. It's obviously asking a lot of the true freshmen, but as a building block wide receiver, I am happy to go with Mike Matthews here at Tennessee.
All right, Josh, you are up with the 2-6. What direction are you going here?
All right. I think I'm going to go to the quarterback since I got robbed with my my QB1 for this year. I'm going to go Luke Kromanek.
Okay.
I like Luke over there at Florida State. I mean, I think, I don't trust DJU to hold on to any job for any period of time. But I do think they brought in Luke. I think they really like Luke a lot. I love his dual threat ability that he can bring to that offense. I think it's really interesting. I mean, I think you saw Mike Norvell have a lot of success with QBs like pre-Jordan Travis, and even Jordan Travis is a guy that went high. But I mean, this is typically an offense that can build around a quarterback who can throw the ball. And I think Luke's kind of this perfect combination of a he's still developing, but I think he's a good pocket passer in a QB friendly system that can also run the ball quite a bit. So I'm going to go with Luke here at 2-6.
Nate, you were up at the 2-7. Who are you going with?
Yeah, I'm gonna pair my pick here at 1-7, Quentin Martin. I'm gonna pair him here at 2-7 with another running back, another freshman running back. He's a top 5 freshman running back for me, and that is from my home team, Taylor Tatum. I think by one of the services, or at least maybe the consensus, he was the number 1 running back in the country coming in. I do not think, while I do like Gavin Sawchuk quite a bit, I do not think that it is all that imposing of a running back room. I think that Javonte Barnes will probably most likely be on his way out after next year. And while I like Hicks, I don't know that he's somebody that's going to keep a really high-end elite running back off the field. My only concern with Tatum is he wasn't there for the spring because he was playing baseball, and I think he ended up breaking his wrist at the end of the season or something like that. But he wasn't available for the spring for Oklahoma. But I don't think that'll set him back too far back. I think we'll still get a couple of really nice seasons out of him. So I'll take Taylor Tatum here.
All right. The character I'm creating here at the 1-8 spot here, I'm going to say is a big Auburn fan because he's going to take his second Tiger off the board here. He's going to pair Cam Coleman up with the quarterback that he is coming to the Plains with, and that is Walker White. Walker White is a guy that I know we at Campus Academy have been following for a long time. We've had him on the show. Very, very nice guy. Very personable at all levels. You can understand why he had a huge effect on being able to help Auburn land the borderline, I don't want to say borderline, the elite a wide receiver class that they were able to pick up in this year's recruiting class. Because outside of Cam Coleman, you also have Perry Thompson and two other high 4-star wide receivers. I can't remember the names off the top of my head. Regardless, it's a great class. There are some reports coming out of spring that, again, Walker White still hasn't really worked his way up the depth chart, which kind of goes against what I was talking about earlier. But here's the thing. I think by year 2, Walker White, while raw this year, will have had the time to develop. I think by year 2, they're going to be looking to try to start him. With Peyton Thorne out after this year, those elite wide receivers that came with Walker White came with Walker White. They're going to want to see the guy they came with out there on the field throwing them the ball. I think just the politics of the situation will kind of force Walker White to be out there by year 2. It'll be Hugh Freeze's system fully by that point. He'll be in year 3. He'll have fully implemented his offense by that time. And as we've seen in the past, Hugh Freeze quarterbacks are just absolutely incredible, especially when they have dual threat abilities like Walker White. So I'm going to go ahead and throw him up here as my second pick for this team. Pair him up with Cam Coleman. Froton, back to you at the 2-9.
Absolutely. Well, I'm trying to keep my teams linear here and try to think of how I would for each of these positions. And Nate isn't helping me by taking 2 running backs right there at his 117. I didn't need that, Nate. I was hoping to get Tatum here at 210, but instead I will pivot and I will go to a pretty nice consolation prize. Ohio State, James Peoples. I think we know that obviously it's pretty well laid out what's about to happen in Ohio State. You have 2 second-round caliber running backs. Maybe one of them squeaks in the first. They're going to be gone after this season, and then in comes, potentially James Peoples. Maybe they bring somebody else in, but there's enough to go around there. And with Peoples' profile of just being one of the true home run hitters of this class, I mean, if you want to talk about, deep speed and guys who are a threat in that same way that Trevion Henderson kind of is, where he isn't huge, Peoples. He isn't, that 215 pounds, but he definitely can put on a little bit. He's a little lean. It has an upright running style. Man, he hits home runs. And if you can hit home runs like that, you can play at Ohio State. So I think the juice is worth the squeeze here. I'm going to go with James Peoples, running back, Ohio State.
All right, Josh, on the clock there at 210. Where are you going?
Yeah, I'm going to go running back too. And I'm going to go with David Eziomume from Clemson. And I do like what Froton said earlier, right? This is a team that you can predict some of the depth chart stuff because they're not going to go after transfer portal. It's part of their culture. And so this is a guy that, I mean, it's a pretty empty backfield after Phil Maffa. I actually think there's some similarities in the way that they run the ball. I do like that David is from Georgia. So again, the competition that he played was pretty good there in the state, it seems like. And yeah, I think he could definitely be the next guy up. And unless they bring in just some stud that's a true freshman next year, then I think the path is pretty clear for him to get playing time. And man, the running back position is very volatile. You never know when somebody's going to get injured. And so if Phil Moffitt gets injured this year, he could be the guy that steps up in his place. And so yeah, I like David Eziamume here at 210.
Nate on the clock there at 211. What you got?
Yeah, I'm gonna go after one of my guys here. I'm gonna probably take a guy that I could get later on, but I want to pair a quarterback here with Jaheim White and somebody that I'm really high on, and that's because he comes from an incredible system. I mean, one of the kingmaker QB systems that there is out there, and that is working underneath Sean Lewis. I'm gonna reach here with AJ Duffy at the 211. I believe he was not on our excluded list, right? Or like
no, he is available in most leagues.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to take AJ Duffy here, man. Transferred out to San Diego State, was initially at Florida State, I believe an IMG Academy kid. So he's got a lot of good tools to work with. He looked great in the spring game. It's just one of those things. So we haven't seen anything from him for the most part. He's got a little bit of dual threat to him, which I like. But I'm gonna put all my faith and push all my chips in on a Sean Lewis quarterback. He did it with Crum. Did with Matt Johnson. We saw Shador Sanders last year. I mean, it's just, hey, I'm going to continue to bet on system, and I'll go AJ Duffy here. And he's got a few years left. I mean, he's got 3. Yeah, he's got some time left.
Absolutely. See, I'm glad you took a supplemental player, Nate, because I was afraid I was going to be the only person taking supplemental players. I'm going to take another one here, and I'm probably going to make you and Josh mad on this next one because I'm going to go wide receiver here. And I'm going to take Denzel Boston, the wide receiver.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, sorry, man. You had your chance.
I wanted to pair him with Damon Williams. I was like, this is going to be beautiful. I'm going to do what Froton did with the Ohio State guys.
Nope, sorry, man. I got to continue to highlight these guys that got 3 years of eligibility left but are starting this year. As much as we want to go after a lot of these freshman guys, like the depth chart ahead of them makes things so muddy for them over the next couple of years versus a lot of these guys, they're in their second year. They're getting ready. Their second or maybe they're in their third year, depending on if they redshirt or not. They're going to start, and they have multiple years of eligibility for them to use. And I think really we should be focusing more and more on these guys that are a bit more surefire at the top of these drafts. So I got to go after Denzel Boston. He looked incredible in the spring game. Will Rogers was basically using him as a safety blanket. I cannot imagine that changes once they actually get into the season. The depth chart for wide receivers at Washington is, I don't want to say it's a joke, but let's be real. Kalen DeBoer didn't exactly leave them much to work with after he left, and Jed Fish could only do so much with the spring transfer portal to bring guys in. It just, the talent wasn't really there in the portal for him to restock with guys. So it's going to be a system where they're not going to be rotating guys a whole ton. And given how much or how well Boston looked this entire spring, he's a guy that could easily see upwards of 8, 9, 10 targets every single game. Washington's going to be playing from behind a ton. So you're going to see Will Rogers airing the ball out a lot. Boston's going to be his go-to guy. It's going to be hard for me to pass up here at this point in the draft. So I'm going Denzel Boston. All right, let me go ahead and pause. I'll run through the draft here real quick of the second round. Let you guys gather your thoughts. At 2-1, Eric took Mr. Julian Sain, the quarterback out of Ohio State. At 2-2, Josh took Ryan Wingo, the freshman wide receiver out of Texas. At 2-3, Nate took Damon Williams, the quarterback out of Washington, freshman there. At 2-4, I took Ricky Hunt, the redshirt freshman running back at Ohio. At 2-5, Eric took Mike Matthews, the wide receiver out of Tennessee. At 2-6, Josh took Luke Kremenuk. It's getting late. I'm mispronouncing names. The quarterback freshman. Kremenhoek. Croman excuse me. The freshman quarterback out of Florida State. At 2-7, Nate went with Taylor Tatum, the running back out of Oklahoma, freshman there. At 2-8, I took Walker White, the quarterback out of Auburn. 2-9, Eric took James People, the running back out of Ohio State, true freshman there. At 2-10, Josh Chevalier took David Eziamume, the running back out of Clemson. At 2-11, Nate takes A.J. Duffy, quarterback out of San Diego State University. And at 2-12, I take Denzel Boston, wide receiver out of Washington. Josh, we'll start with you, man. Most interesting pick in the second round that was not your own?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the one that I liked the best was Damon Williams. I mean, because that's the guy that I think he is my CFF QB1 as far as a guy. I mean, I did like him in the Army All-American game when he played there, and he was throwing to some good guys. But any guy that's got that dynamic dual threat ability, I could see him playing in year 1, 2 if they get off to a rough start, kind of what we talked about with Florida. Like, he could come in and replace Will Rogers. I don't think any of us think that Will Rogers is like elite in any way. I mean, he's reliable, but they're 1-4, 1-5. I think they put in Damon Williams, and he could play a lot. And his wheels are just different, in my opinion. And man, that's a really QB friendly system with Jed Fish. So I could see him putting up, being one of those things where they might not win a lot of games, but he could put up numbers in that offense. So I like Damon Williams.
I think it speaks to, the strategy here is very interesting, right? Because like this same team, right, that Nate has here would have gotten DJ Lagway and Damon Williams. Like, if you're a team that's struggling at quarterback, I think there is a way for you in your supplemental drafts to kind of quickly restock at the position with some decent guys here at the top. If you know how to kind of move your picks around and really kind of rebuild your quarterback room pretty quickly, if you know the guys to target here. Eric, most interesting pick in the second round here that was not your own. Which one?
I think it's AJ Duffy. And the reason why is I've gotten conflicting reports out here in San Diego about his performance. And just in terms of when I've watched him, he might stink.
There's a legit chance.
He might just stink. I don't know what he does. I'm not saying, I understand the logic. I get it. It's San Diego State, Sean Lewis. It's a weak conference, and they could potentially be real kingmakers there. I'm worried about AJ himself. The logic behind the spot is obviously proven. I'm just not sure about him. So I just think that's an interesting pick. But hey, this is where I think the draft starts to kind of turn. It already has for Jared. He has already started taking the supplemental guys, but I feel like now the supplemental picks are where the 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds really start to litter those rounds.
I'm definitely excited to see who you guys take, because Josh and Eric, you guys still have your elite supplemental picks to use here in the 3rd round. I don't know if you did that on purpose, knowing that you could wait because nobody else was going to take them, but I'm excited to see who you take. Nate, most interesting pick to you here in the 2nd round. Not your own.
I mean, Ricky Hunt was one that stood out. He was one I really wanted at 2-3. Mostly just took Damon Williams, just like I said, to snake him from anybody else here. But I like that Ricky Hunt pick. The one that also stood out to me, Luke Croman. I just don't know enough about him, I guess, would be the thing. I haven't seen a whole lot of tape on him. And it sounds like they kind of like Brock Glenn as well too there. So I kind of am kind of mixed on how confident I am in Croman to take over that gig next year, or if that talk of Brock Glenn is really just to kind of keep him from transferring. It's just kind of one of those deals.
I think I'll call it but I'll talk about the Croman pick here as well, mostly due to the fact that, again, I took Walker White. So like I'm also a little bit guilty of this, but like that, we're starting to kind of get in that tier, that QB tier, where things are a little bit more murky with the depth charts ahead of them, right? As Nate kind of pointed out, Brock Glenn's still hanging around Florida State there. At Walker White, they got some guys ahead of him technically right now, although I do think he'll climb the depth chart as the year goes on. And looking at some of the supplemental players that are available, you're looking at a lot of guys with multiple years of eligibility that are going to start this year. And so I just think, like, if I personally was looking at quarterback, like Croman, is behind a lot of the guys that I have here on the board. I just think I would probably have gone a little bit different of a direction, especially when it comes to guys with kind of murky futures there. Josh, two of us talked about your Coleman Hook pick there. You want to defend it?
I'm just offended, man. I think I'm not worried about Brock Glenn personally. Like, I spend quite a bit of time on the Florida State message boards, and the way they talk about Coleman Hook and the coaches do, I think, versus Brock Glenn is different. Yeah. And I just think, I think there's a level of upside with Coleman Hook, and
I know Matt Bruning likes him a lot. Matt Bruning's a big fan.
Oh yeah, he loves him.
Yeah, and there's just some of this, man. Like, there's just so much. You just try to shoot for upside and go, man, half these guys are going to bust anyways. And so Luke could totally be that guy. Also with quarterbacks, again, I'm going to go more talent. If he gets beat out by Brock Glenn, he's not staying. And so then where does he go? And does he drop down a level? Like, does he end up at a Georgia Southern? I don't know. But I think that there's possibilities for him. I just like his talent. Anybody that's 6'4", 205, that he was a linebacker before he was a quarterback, and he was a wide receiver. So he's just super athletic. He's physical, but he's decently fast. So yeah, these dual threat guys, I'm gonna take some risks on. And even though I hate Florida State as a school.
Alrighty, I think we're ready to move on to our third and final round. Froton, say when, and you will be on the clock at 3-1. All right, you're on. You are muted, sir.
I've been waiting patiently, as you had pointed out, Jared, to wait for my super supplemental pick, I guess is what you could call it. And
I like that.
Yeah, with Jeremiah Smith and Julian Sayin already in the can here, feel like I've adequately addressed the wide receiver and quarterback positions. But with Mario Anderson just hanging out there, I mean, stepping right in from South Carolina into that premium Memphis running back one position. I mean, it's hard to pass up the free points, as we talked about. Obviously, I didn't want to let Josh get his hands on him over here at the 3-2 pick. So having a nice, well-rounded quarterback, wide receiver duo, putting what I consider to be probably an RB2 starter on a weekly basis in Anderson, at least if everything goes well in that position there for Memphis, which should be a 35 to 38 point per game offense. I just think all the stars are aligned. So I'm going to take Mario Anderson.
All right. Josh, your last one with a super supplemental pick. Are you going to use it here, or are you going a different direction? Who you got at 3-2?
Yeah, I think, I guess at this point, I don't even know if I'm going to use it, to be honest.
Okay.
All the guys that I would want to have there, I mean, Mario Anderson was the last one.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, Rashad Owens, there's some other guys here that I like, but I think I'm not going to take that. I think I'm just going to go back to the freshman well, and I'm going to take some of my guys that I just like here. And so one of the guys that I really like is Caden Durham from LSU. Again, I think the backfield is potentially murky there, but this is a kid that runs a 10.3 100-meter. He's run as low as a 10.25, and not just one. He's run multiple of them. He's 200 pounds. He's 5'9". And so he can fly. He averaged 10 yards a carry at Duncanville High School over 2 different years, and 200 plus carries. I think he had 2,900 yards this last year, like 39 touchdowns. The production is just absolutely insane at the highest level of Texas football. And so I think he could step in this year and play some. And then I don't know what's going to happen in the future with Caleb Jackson there and all that. I think he's a better running back than Caleb Jackson, but it's hard to ignore that Caleb Jackson's 6 foot, 215, 220, and runs a 10.600 meter. But I like Caden Durham a lot, so I'm going to bet on his talent here at the 3-2, and I'm going to take Caden Durham. And I talked about him a lot, and I did not cue him up whatsoever. So I'm going to do that as I'm talking here. But yeah, Durham's a guy. I've just studied him a lot, and I really like his talent quite a bit.
All right, Nate, on the clock at 3-3. Where are you going, man?
All right, so you this was the squad you talked me out of Ricky Hunt last time and into a second quarterback. So I think it would be a little bit of overkill here to take another quarterback. So I will look actually back towards running back.
Don't do it.
Um,
No, I
I
wanted him.
I don't I know this is one of your guys, but I know you have two guys pretty neck and neck here that you really like. So I'll probably take one of these two here. But I'm actually going to go to a freshman here in Cam Davis at Florida State. So I'm going to pair him with the two quarterbacks here. He's the guy that has a power four ready body like right now. Like he looks like a dude that could, if you're getting off the bus, he's going to be just fine in the power four. He's there. It's a fine, it's a fairly deep running back room, but there's no proven stud. There's no real workhorse here, and Norvell's been known to mix and match players quite a bit. So it wouldn't shock me if he gets on the field at least a little bit here early on, and next year I think he could really kind of take off here. Maybe him and Croman Hook kind of run things together, but. I will go with Cam Davis here as my running back to pair with Lagway and Damon Williams.
Dang, I was really hoping I could kind of perfect like a perfect trio of running backs with this 1-4 pick of like two supplemental guys and then just shoot for upside with a third freshman pick there. But c'est la vie, I will go with a third upside running back here with multiple years of eligibility left. I will admit that this is probably the unsafest pick of the three running backs that we're looking at here for this team. But this character here at 1-4 does not care. He's going to take all the upside shots he can at running back, especially in a year like this where there doesn't seem to be a ton of options. I'm going to throw out there Lee BB, the running back out of UAB, averaged over 7 yards per carry last year. There is, of course, some concern that, Isaiah Jacobs is coming back this year after his injury-riddled year last year. You would think that he'll probably get the first crack at it, but man, BB, as the year went on last year, it was hard to keep him off the field at times, even with Jermaine Brown Jr. just being an absolute monster during the season. BB looked absolutely phenomenal. Again, the easily the biggest concern, as I mentioned, is that he probably will be in a committee to start this year. Hopefully his talent breaks out and he kind of takes over the room as it goes along. But again, that's the kind of risk you start taking here at the end, because if he hits, we've seen that system produce top 15 running backs for CFF, and that's absolutely something I'm willing to take a shot on here. Or he could be stuck in a committee for the next 3 years there at UAB, because they do have more talented backs as well. But that's just the character of this team. We're going to keep it going with upside picks here at running back. We're going to go Lee BB. Eric, over to you, man. Who are you picking?
Yeah, well, I've gone mostly freshman this way through, but I figure I have to go and take somebody who's in the supplemental realm. So I am going to take a second-year player with 3 years of eligibility. None other than my friend and yours, Jacoby Lane, USC wide receiver. I love Jacoby Lane. Obviously, you have Zachariah Branch there. Makai Lemon is probably going to be rotating through that slot role. And Deuce Robinson is the pseudo tight end out there on the boundary. I think Jacoby Lane is better than Deuce Robinson. Deuce Robinson is probably going to end up in tight end at some point. I mean, he kind of tries to work the sideline, but everything I hear around camp, everything that I've seen and heard, Jacoby Lane is the number 2 to Branch. He is going to be that outside true X, similar to Pittman and Drake London. And I think it's going to be him over Deuce. So with him on this list and him available, I am going to take Jacoby Lane.
All righty. Josh, up for your second to last pick here. Who are you going with?
Yeah, I'm going to go with John Mateer from Washington State. So I'm going to use my supplemental pick. And he's only 1% owned. And I actually think Zevi Eckhouse is more talented, and I think he could absolutely win that job. But Mateer is the one that's been going in drafts higher, and he's a redshirt sophomore. So I'm going to take him here. He is a dual threat dude, so I think it's very interesting in that system with Ben Arbuckle, a guy that could throw a lot of passes, have the explosiveness, but also he can run the ball. And so you could see him pick up yards on the ground and touchdowns. Also, he has a nice connection with Josh Meredith there, right? Another guy. And he's absolutely a guy that could go off in that system. If he doesn't win it this year, then it's probably his next year. Potentially, you never know with the transfer portal. And look, I'll just pick Levi Eckhouse later in the draft because I think he's just going to be there for whenever I want him. And so I'll just lock up that room. And I think either one of those guys I'm going to be happy to have. But I'm going to go John Mateer here in this one at the 3.6.
I know for a fact Nate has employed that strategy in his supplemental draft already this year where he had John Mateer. He went ahead and grabbed Zevi Eckhouse as well, which is a smart strategy, right? One thing I think, again, I know I'm technically, Nate, you're on the clock here.
No, go ahead.
But it is smart in these supplemental drafts to take a look who you already have on your roster and prioritize the guys coming in behind him. I don't think it's a bad idea to lock up some of these rooms in the future just in case. If your guy goes down, you want the next guy up. Nate, go, man.
Yeah, I will third that sentiment. I do think that race is actually really close with Mateer and Eckhouse. I do think it needs to be a handcuff. In fact, I've got an article coming out here in the next couple of days that highlights that specific situation. So with this pick here at the 3-7, I've got 2 running backs so far on this team with Quentin Martin, Taylor Tatum. It's time for, I haven't even drafted a wide receiver yet for this entire draft. So maybe it's time for me to draft a wide receiver. Thanks to Jared taking Denzel Boston from me. I will go ahead and take Bryant Wesco here for Clemson. I don't love Clemson's offense. I admit it, but we've talked about it a few times. There's no change. There's no transfer portal. Dabo is as rigid as you can imagine. So I think that there is value in the dynasty format, knowing that when you draft these high-end freshmen like TJ Moore, like Bryant Wesco, like Eziamume, that they're likely to not go anywhere, and they're not likely to not have a transfer come in and flood that room like we've seen with Texas and some other places. So I will go Bryant Wesco here.
Alrighty. At the 3-8 pick here, I'm going to continue with my Auburn fan here. No, I'm not drafting a third straight Tiger, but I will draft somebody that this guy's probably able to go and watch the games of in Alabama. There's a couple of quarterbacks I've mentioned before, A.J. Duffy being one, where they have multiple years of eligibility left. They were true freshmen last year, and they are set for multiple years of starting, and that will continue here with Mr. Giovanni Lopez out of South Alabama. Had himself a fine finish to end last year, had over 100 yards rushing in the bowl game. He should be in line for a great year there at South Alabama. Yes, he did not complete a single one of his 13 passes in the spring game, but it was also a windy day, and everybody has their off days. I saw enough out of him last year when they were kind of running him towards the end of the year that tells me that, yes, he was a true freshman, definitely made some true freshman mistakes, but with another year or another offseason under his belt, I do think he should be ready to go to run this Applewhite system here. He'll have some great receiving options in Jamal Pritchett, Devin Voisin coming back. He has 2 good running backs, both decent out of the backfield that he'll be able to work with. I'm willing to take the shot on a guy with 3 years of eligibility here, playing in the Sun Belt, dual threat. Give me Gio Lopez. Eric, back to you, sir. At the 3-9.
Final pick for Froton.
Final pick for everyone.
Pick for all of us. So
make it count.
I just took 2 non-freshmen, so I figured I got to end up on a freshman. I already have a wide receiver and a running back on this team, so I'm going to finish it out with my favorite sleeper. Well, not sleeper. I mean, my favorite potential fantasy just rocket ship quarterback. This kid is a engineering major, very cerebral. I got to talk to him about the installs that he was doing for this offense all the way back last year at this time of year, in June, and he was already going through the installs. Super sharp, was a 3-star heading into the Elite 11, and clearly demonstrated himself to be one of the better QBs in the country amongst a group of the best. And he took a step down to no one right there with all the competitions. Got himself his 4th star after that competition, really showed himself to be, somebody worthy of considering. So I'm going to take Will Hammond, Texas Tech.
I was waiting.
I cannot fathom that Zach Kittley wants to run the ball 300 times with Taj Brooks again. I don't believe it. I mean, it goes against his nature. And when it comes down to, embracing your nature as an offensive coordinator, the same thing with Heupel. It's the same principle as with Texas Tech. Joe Milton was that bad that they had to run the ball. Baron Morton and Tyler Shuck were that bad that they made him run the ball. Will Hammond will take that job this year, and he will be a starting quarterback in year 1.
All righty. I think if you truly believe that, Froton, I think you might have the best value in the draft right now.
We'll see.
Josh, 310, who are you going with?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the supplemental player pool, and this is probably about the time that I'll start doing it anyways, but Chris Brazzell from Tennessee is a kid that I'm going to go after. I do like him a lot. I mean, I think he showed some ability there at Tulane. I know they will love him at Tennessee. I think he's a great deep threat. I think he's a great pair with Nico. I could totally see Mike Matthews being that guy that Froton took earlier, but I don't think that's necessarily a given that Brazzell is not going to have, a chance in this offense and play outside. So I'm going to take a shot on Brazzell. I mean, this is a system play too. I mean, you want to take shots on guys from a system like Tennessee. And so Brazzell's a guy that I really like a lot, and the staff likes him. So I'm going to take a shot here.
All righty. Nate, your last pick, and take your time because I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to go with on my last pick.
It's I think it's flag plant season here with this last pick. So I'm going to go ahead and plant my flag on a guy that I know would never go this early in a draft, but he's kind of a guy that I don't want to leave a draft without when it comes to Dynasty. And I'm okay if you guys say that this is really kind of stupid, but I love the system and I really like the player from what I've seen on tape. And that is Mario Craver, who is a freshman wide receiver going to Mississippi State. He is the top recruit that Jeff Lebby is basically getting in this class. He is a perfect fit for that system, a guy who could play inside or out, but primarily going to be a slot guy and lightning quick. And Jeff Lebby is a guy, as we know, with that veer and shoot offense, Baylor style spread, throw it around system. I mean, dear God, he made Drake Stoops a fantasy stud last year, borderline top 20 wide receiver. If you can do that with Drake Stoops, you can definitely do it with what I've seen from a player like Mario Craver. They're going to have to be, playing from behind pretty much every game here in the SEC. Only thing that concerns me is that he did recently get arrested for, I don't know, possession or something like that. So a little bit of a yellow flag there. But for the most part, I think that he is, when he's on the field, he's going to be really good. So I will take Mario Craver here.
I am of half a mind, because we have Froton on the show, to take a freshman Tito. But I'm not. I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm deciding between two running backs here. One is one's a freshman and then one's a supplemental guy. But I think I'll lean towards the freshman here, and I'll go Jason Patterson, the running back out of Kentucky. Quite frankly, again, if we're talking about guys among freshmen, right, you're looking for guys that are making their way up to that number 2 spot on the depth chart. Trey Odom should be the number 1 guy for Kentucky this year. But again, a lot of spring reports have talked about Patterson coming in and doing all the right things, kind of working his way up that depth chart. I know Phil Steele had him at RB4 in his guide recently, but I think that kind of speaks to just how close that backfield is in general. And when you have a guy who is being talked about as being on par with a lot of the veterans already in that room, especially in a system where they have produced elite guys in the past for CFF. I mean, think about Raymond Davis just this past year. I got to take notice of that. Again, guys and think about like Ruben Owens. He could be in for a big jump this year. He was already even with a lot of the veterans on his team last year. I think a similar situation could happen here with Jason Patterson. Absolutely could be even with Trey Odom by the end of the year if all things go right. And then with Trayon leaving after this year, he could be in for a massive year in year 2. I think I'll go that direction here. But there's a lot of good options here on the board left. So that's my final pick. I'll run through the third round real quick. We'll discuss the third round real quick. We'll kind of do some general talk, but I know we're kind of going long here a little bit, so we'll try to keep it quick. Third round here, Eric took Mario Anderson at the 3-1. Josh took Caleb Durham, the freshman running back out of LSU, at the 3-2. Nate follows that with Cam Davis, the running back out of Florida State, at 3-3. I take Lee BB, the running back out of UAB, at 3-4. Froton takes Jacoby Lane, the second-year wide receiver at USC, at 3-5. Josh takes John Mateer, the redshirt freshman quarterback at Washington State, or actually no, redshirt sophomore quarterback, I believe, at Washington State at the 3-6. Nate takes his only wide receiver of the draft, Bryant Wesco, at 3-7 there. I followed that up with Gio Lopez at 3-8, the redshirt, or no, regardless, second-year quarterback there at South Alabama. Froton takes Will Hammond at the 3-9. Josh takes Chris Brazell, the transfer wide receiver to Tennessee, at the 3-10. Nate takes Mr. Craver there, the wide receiver out of Mississippi State, at 3-11, Mario Craver. And then I finish the draft with Jason Patterson, running back out of Kentucky, at the 3-12. So we'll start on the right side this time. Nate, most interesting pick of the third round that was not your own.
I would probably say Lee BB, however he pronounces it.
I think it's just BB.
BB. Okay. Yeah, that's what every time I see his name, I think of that song. But yeah, BB is probably the one that stood out to me. I know that Phil Still definitely does not like this roster that you've assembled here with Hunt and BB. He does not think either one of them are going to start for their respective teams. So, but I like his game, and he was very efficient, very productive last year when he was called upon. There's a number of backs in that UAB backfield, which could make me hesitate a little bit in like a third round of a sup with him, but I like the player.
All right. It makes me wonder with Lee, real quick with Lee, like when you see him on film, he's really good. Mm-hmm. And then you ask the question, like, why isn't he just getting this backfield outright? And, what are the things that we don't know? Or what is it pass protect? Like, I don't know.
Right.
I'm not watching, a ton of UAB day in, day out, or, the whole film. So I don't see him pass protect. But there's things like that I'm like, man, the talent's there. So then what is it that I'm missing?
I would argue that, again, that you're being true to your veterans last year, like Jermaine Brown. They wanted to kind of give him the love that he deserved for being with that program for so long, right? And again, Brown was no slouch. It's not like he was out there averaging 3 yards a carry or anything. He was very, very good. So, like, why take the ball out of his hands? And again, if he gets tired, Lee can come right in and just pick up right where he's at. I think I'm okay with Lee BB here at the 3-4. I will admit that me taking him this early was a little bit me trying to play into the character here at 3-4 of just trying to take upside supplemental running backs over and over again for this roster. I probably would have waited in a real draft. I probably would have waited another round or two, but also I've seen Lee BB go off in the first, second round range in supplemental drafts already this year. So I'm not totally off base taking him this early. And not that you guys are accusing me of that, but I'm saying, like, people shouldn't be surprised if they see him go off in drafts early on.
Yeah, I mean, Jermaine Brown was awesome last year. I mean, if he's the next man up, then wheels up.
Right. And I want to ask you guys a question with Mario Craver, because I really like Mario Craver too. Where, like, Froton, Jared, where would you guys take Mario Craver?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. I actually recently took him in a draft. Yeah. I'll go ahead, Jared, while I'm looking for him where I took him at, but I think it was right around the 7th round of like the 2014 supplemental.
Yeah, he's flying under the radar right now for sure, and I think that's one of those deals where, yes, we are in CFF Dynasty. There's no ADP, right? There's not enough drafts for people to really kind of gauge where guys are going. Now that we've talked about him, Nate, like he's not going to be available in that that late in any supplemental drafts moving forward here, especially now that people know that you like him. I think that again.
Oh gosh, I got him. I got him ninth round, 201st player off the board. So
Exactly.
That's crazy.
ninth
Yeah.
ninth round of a 24 teamer. So yeah, so 201 off the board.
Again,
Right.
I think. Go ahead, Josh.
Just real quick, to me, like he's a top 10 CFF, incoming freshman wide receiver in a class that's stacked. Like I really like him. I like that pick a lot. You're not going to get any grief from me. See somebody take him there. Just upset that we won't be able to get him in the ninth round anymore.
Sorry.
Froton, you got any thoughts on Craver?
I think it's a case of Mississippi. The reason why it's fallen, Mississippi State has the Armstead stink on it still. I mean, they're obviously going to a more loaded SEC and are perceived to be, and also ran, sort of a school after what happened last year and just the clear step back they took. So I think that kind of accounts for what's going on with Craver. Is just there isn't a lot of, when a team doesn't have buzz and it doesn't have a little bit of sizzle or like some kind of, factor to kind of make it relevant on the college fantasy scene. These teams that are the lower echelon teams of big conferences can fly under the radar. And I think that's the case with Craver, despite the fact that obviously we know Levy's coming in, but,
right.
Does it take a year and what does that look like? But obviously for a long-term play, Levy isn't going anywhere. He's going to get a few years. This is his guy.
Right.
You got to think he'll be able to grow in that role.
I think also to kind of expand on your point there, Froton, what little buzz Mississippi State is getting right now, like what brain power people are giving the Bulldogs right now, is reserved for the guys that should be starting this year, right? People are looking at Kelly Akari. People are looking at Kevin Coleman. They're like, all right, let's just see if these guys pan out before we really start kind of investing into some of these future guys. Right. Yeah. Like you said, Froton, maybe this offense takes a year. I personally think it'll get started this year. I think Levy has literally nothing to lose. He's going to try to put up as many points as possible, make this offense as alluring as possible for future recruitment. And if he doesn't care if they lose 8 games as long as they're putting up 35, 40 points a game. He can stack the defense later and use that as a recruitment tool. He wants to get people's butts in seats and make sure that Mississippi State is an exciting program moving forward. So I like it, Nate, because I think, again, outside of those two guys, that depth chart is very barren behind them, and a guy like Craver could absolutely rock it up, if not start by the end of the year.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, these are the type of players, the Cravers. I think Will Hammond is another one like this.
Yeah.
When you can find value in systems, and usually when guys go to different places, like Eric Morris, right? Last year going to UNT, you get Chandler Rogers, because there's some question marks around depth chart. Same thing with Brian Brown, right? There's some question marks there a little bit. If you can get any kind of value on these types of guys, this is where you win leagues and win drafts, is when you can get value. And Will Hammond, I think some people see Baron Morton and they go, oh, well, maybe Zach Cutley isn't it. Well, Baron Morton sucks. sorry, Bainbridge.
He does.
And Will Hammond is good, right? And so I think there's a difference here. It's these types of players that you can get, if you can get value on, then you can win your leagues.
Did you guys have anybody staring at you that you ended up not taking, that just kept floating by on your in your queue, that was kind of left out there?
Josh Meredith.
Mylan Graham,
yeah.
Josh Meredith for me.
Great spring. I mean, where could he go, Of course, Jared, you Mr. Supplemental.
Mine was
freshman Jared.
Mine was Hawaii quarterback Michael Alejo or Aledo.
Good call.
Yeah, it's just man, I kept wanting to pull the trigger. Him and Will Hammond were the two where I was like, well, at some point I got to take a wide receiver, so I guess I'm not going to take these guys.
Luke Reynolds too for tight end at Penn State. He could be a superstar in terms of his ability to catch the ball. And obviously it's tough to take a tight end in a 3-round supplemental, here, but I wanted to find a reason to fit him in as well.
The other running back. Oh, go ahead, Josh.
No, I was just gonna say, man, like I have so many guys like midway through the second round, basically with the Luke pick. It's like I got guys that are still on my board that I would maybe take over Luke in the same position. Like I just have like such a flat ranking outside of a lot of the top guys this year.
Yeah.
And then I do think the supplemental and there is players like Josh Meredith, right, that you could take, but like the younger guys with a lot of years of eligibility in the supplemental pool, they're not available because like they transferred. Like we picked them up last year, they transferred to another school, and now the Noah Rogers of the world are going to play. And so it's interesting. It's like I think there's a lot of like I would honestly, in a lot of these like second, third round, I may just trade down and like see who's left in the fourth, fifth round and pick up draft capital, or trade up to the first round and just stack guys that I really like there. So I find a lot of this is like it's not that I like any of I like all of these guys, but I like some of these other guys that I still have sitting out here too.
All righty. Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of our show here. Again, long show, but lots of great discussion. Again, Josh, Eric, thank you guys so much for coming on. You guys are doing a fantastic job over there with Fantasy Points. You got your Dynasty month going on as we speak with this draft. Again, it's perfect timing to have you guys on here for this. So let the people know, what are you guys working on over there at Fantasy Points? Eric, you're working on some stuff for NBC Sports Edge, obviously, as well. This is your time to shine. Let the people know what you guys are doing.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, Eric.
Go for it, Josh.
No, go ahead, Eric. No, I mean, at Fantasy Points, where Eric and I and Zach Hall are working on a CFF preseason guide. It's going to be free that we're going to release. And so it's kind of more of a primer than it is like a full out guide that you guys do at Camps to Canton. And so we're really excited about that. We got free ADP over there. And so we're just cranking things up. And we got Dynasty Month, like you mentioned. And Froton, I'll let you take it from here with all the other work that you're doing.
Yeah, sure. Well, as far as this weekend, tomorrow morning, I'll get up and I'll be driving to Manhattan Beach, where I'll be watching 3 days of the Elite 11 2025. I'm excited to see who the counselors are because each year, last year it was Caleb, Penix, Jaden Daniels, and then Talia Tagovailoa. So each year the college counselors are a who's who. And obviously I hope my binky boy Carson Beck is there. But so I'll be, following up, having some updates from there. Otherwise, I'll be doing some of my long form writing content, position analysis that I did last year. That'll be going in all my preseason work's going to Fantrax because we're trying to make sure we get as much relevant content for all the newcomers out there that they can parse through. And, I'm really excited to be able to partner and do that with them for their preseason content to help everybody out. And obviously, I will be over at the CFF All Access podcast with my friend Josh that I'm on here with, as well as the soon-to-be married Michael Bainbridge and Zach Hall. So staying busy in the off season, and let's get fired up. Should be any time now we get the season-long props, and we all love season-long props.
That is always the most exciting 15 minutes of our life before Prize Picks inevitably takes down half of them because Froton and Bainbridge have hopped on half of them and put $500,000 on each of them.
Oh, we all get it. Amazing. It ain't just us on the season longs. It's the whole community. We all feed at the trough of those season long props. So we all love it. And congrats! I can't wait to talk with you guys about it. Hopefully we'll have some chatter about that when they drop.
Oh, yeah. That'll be a fun live show there. Nate, what are you working on, man, for the people? What do you got?
I'm working on our CFF guide over at Campus Canton. So working on that for sure. As I mentioned, I got a QB handcuff article coming out here pretty soon. Kind of a follow-up on one that I did last year. Seemed to work out pretty well. So have that one on there. So be on the lookout for that. Other than that, man, just grinding away on the CFF guide.
Speaking of that CFF guide, again, we have that coming out July 7th, just in time for that July 4th weekend there for you guys to get some reading material there at the end after you are super tired and stuffed full of wonderful cookout food from the weekend. You can sit back, relax, and get yourself caught up for the upcoming CFF season. And we will, of course, include our freshman 50 section in there again, which will highlight a ton of players that should have some immediate impact for you guys this upcoming year. So be on the lookout for that. Pre-orders are actually, as we're recording this, they're not up yet, but by the time this show comes out, they will be available on campuscanton.com, and we are offering a discount on those pre-orders here for the first bit, so make sure you get in on that. With that being said, Eric, Josh, appreciate you guys so much for coming on and being our first guest. I know it's late, so we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Nate, you are awesome as always. Love doing this with you every single month. But now it is time for us to rest, and we'll be back here next month. Appreciate all of you guys listening out there. And until then, have a wonderful and blessed month. See y'all.